Now you're seeing the same thing happen again with energy, where you have solar panels, you have wind options, you have hydro, you have geothermal. All those options are better, far better, and no one would disagree with that statement, that those are far better ways to create the energy that we all need so desperately to power our homes and businesses and schools and municipalities. So the only question is whether or not, and this is one of the challenges, whether or not the government is going to take this very seriously and continue to pass legislation, stronger legislation, to encourage the private sector to switch over. Because it's not a hidden secret that a lot of the reasons we're not switching over at a faster rate is because there's a lot of billions of dollars against renewables as well. For every $1 being spent, there are dollars being spent on the opposite side to keep us pumping oil out of the ground. And that's one of the biggest challenges I think that we face as a community and as a country. And it's not unheard of. There are countries that have gone 100% green. So we can do it, especially as a country when we bind together and create legislation that encourages it. Renewable switchovers, we can make that happen. So that's one of the challenges, the legislation. On a local level, and here in Massachusetts, one of the best programs we have is the SREC program. This is a program that is a tax credit for business owners or homeowners to encourage them to go solar. And that's something I'm very, very intimately familiar with in the USI, which is the Urban Solar Initiative project that I put together with some local business owners, which I'll go into later because I want to answer this question now. So in terms of opportunities, I see opportunities for solar specifically. It's an excellent technology, and there's tons of space for solar on roofs. And of course over parking lots like you saw driving into BCC. So huge, huge opportunities because of the space we have. The sun's going to come out, and we should be absorbing that power. And then, in terms of other renewables, wind, same thing, hydro, and geothermal. My area of expertise goes with solar, and that's what we'll be speaking on tonight. But definitely encouraging legislation to push all sectors towards green technologies.
I agree with Jazel when he says, is the government going to take this seriously? First off, I want to thank the event sponsors for having me on as a panelist with this distinguished group of speakers. When Breaking Point, we know is going to be scheduled to close in 2017, 190 people are going to be displaced out of work, and the community is going to lose a significant amount of tax revenue. Not only that, we're going to have a loss of energy to the grid. These losses are not going to be trivial, and they will have a substantial impact. So now the question becomes, what does a community do, a region do, when jobs are lost? The economy we know is going to be negatively impacted, and there's going to be a significant loss of answers. I don't think there's any easy answers to these questions. There are many challenges, but I think what it's going to take is strong leadership, both on the local level and the state level, to address these matters. It's going to take alliances, and it's going to take partnership to deal with these concerns. But I do have faith that as a region, as a state, we will persevere. We must first build support for clean energy initiatives among state and local decision makers. And then we must identify opportunities where meeting today's energy challenges can also serve as future economic development. So I look forward to an informative discussion here this evening on the options that can boost both the local area, the South Coast, Massachusetts, as a world leader in the clean energy industry. Thank you.
Because my program and the program and the partners that I work with primarily focus on the residential market when it comes to energy efficiency and renewable energy, I can speak a little bit about how our grassroots organizing work with the towns that we serve, which is about 30 towns here in the South Coast region, kind of overlap with the state programs that are offered under the Mass State program and the Clean Energy Center renewable programs, and where we overlap with some of the municipal efforts that are going on in some of the towns already. I feel primarily the challenge is that there's a lack of resources on the town side. Organizations like mine are nonprofits that love to work with town governments to put forward information to the residents, and there's a real lack of resources very few committees related to energy or sustainability on the town side, so they're really stretched. We filled the void a little bit, but I feel that if each town actually had an advocate who was informed either by the state or worked in cooperation with the state, that certainly that would make our job easier, but it would also make a better informed resident. I also feel that there's a real opportunity in each town to for citizen demand. So as energy prices increase, residents feel that they really have no say in those increases because the utility has put forward the increase and gotten it approved. So we receive calls all the time from residents who just don't know what to do. We can offer them certain programs, but there should be someone who works in the town who can also speak for them when it comes to larger decisions on a regional level. Our internship program, we feel, is a job creator, and when it comes to challenges within the region for jobs, and certainly the possibility of the loss of jobs, we feel that young people are so interested in these technologies and they really want to learn about them. They want to get their feet wet, so to speak. So our program does provide some access to the real technology, to the homeowners who have solar, to the solar farms that are going up in some of these towns. And these students are looking for certificate programs like they have here at BCC. But are they finding the jobs when they get out of those programs? So I think that's the real challenge, is connecting the students who are interested, who may even have the skills and are learning the skills, with job mentors or company mentors who can take them into the job market and put those skills to use. I also feel that community networks are so important when it comes to issues like this. Right now, there's a real disconnect between the state Mass Save program and the utilities, which basically hold the purse strings for that program, and the communities. There are many, many residents who pay into the program who absolutely have no access to those funds when it comes to heat loans or energy efficiency audits. Our program is trying to work on that by putting forward some public comments at the end of the month in Boston when it comes to the 3-year energy efficiency plan. So some real challenges. We're very excited because we work with youth and we see how excited they are. And we'd like to sustain that excitement, connect them with the towns and some of these programs and initiatives so they can really see that there's a future for a green economy in the South Coast.
First off, I really agree with what everyone on the panel has said thus far. And I do think we have a lot of challenges with breaking point closing in the near future. And if we do not go the route of renewable energy, one of the things that I think may be a big challenge is the increase in utility prices. As you know, they have already gone up this year, and they will continue to rise. And the other challenge I see is displaced workers. And although the closing of breaking point will result in a lot of job loss, one of the things I think we can do to combat that is to train people in the green jobs area. I mean, if the sun's not going anywhere, why not put it to use and reduce our energy use? As you know, I run for Next Step Living. We're an energy and weatherization company, and we're very diligent about energy reduction and conservation and providing green jobs. We started out in 2008. There's only 50 people in the company, and we now have offices in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New York, and we employ 850 people today. And so the industry is growing, and there is a need for quality workers. And we need to train these people so that we can get them out there on the job. And if anybody knows anybody who is looking for a job, even now, we're constantly hiring, and we're constantly looking for quality people to work for us.
As an educational institute, and I see people around, I see one of the biggest challenges is for people to understand that climate change is not something in the future. Climate change is occurring right now. You know, we've seen Hurricane Sandy, when that caused a problem. Sea level has risen in New York already a foot. That's why the subways got flooded, because climate change is going on. In New England, our average temperature has risen already 2 degrees. Now I say 2 degrees and everything, but if our worldwide average temperature changes 5 degrees, that's the difference between what we have now and an ice age. So 5 degree global temperature change. We've already changed in winter in New England 4 degrees. So right now our precipitation in the winter is mainly rain. It's not snow anymore. So one of the things that we try and profess, do what we talk about, and as an educational institute, we haven't just started. We've been going. Our president, President Sprague, was one of the charter signatories of the American Colleges and Universities President's Climate Commitment. So he was one of the first signers nationwide to this program. And we started in 2008. We did a greenhouse gas inventory of the college, which greenhouse gases are what's causing the increase in temperature on the planet. And we found one thing was that 72% of our greenhouse gases are actually from community, which makes it a very difficult thing to try and control. 28% came from our facilities operation and from our external energy sources. And so one of the things we first did was in 2008, we installed a 10 kilowatt photovoltaic system on the top of B building, which is our engineering building, which was mostly used for educational purposes. It still did generate a bunch of power, and it's been going quite a bit. And what we did by 2009, we actually had a climate action plan for the college and what we're going to be doing. And it's actually the plan has us going carbon neutral by 2050. And so one of the things we've also done in 2009 was a comprehensive energy and water audit for this. So what we did as a result of that was we installed high efficiency lighting throughout. There was over 6,000 or some more bulbs that were replaced and all. And we put motion sensors, had sophisticated energy management system on the campus. And we also did a lot of re-insulation of our water pipes and valves. And we also did a big water reduction use, because we want to show that we do what we're talking about. And so by 2010, we also installed a 86 kilowatt solar power system on the tops of B building, C building, D building, and F building. And so we had a 100 kilowatt system there. And by 2014, we had actually received the Massachusetts Leading by Example award. And it was we've had a 47% reduction in domestic water use and a 24% reduction in our energy. And so some of the things that we have currently going on, you saw as you came in these like canopies over the parking lot. That's a 3.2 megawatt solar voltaic field. It's the largest in New England. And it's also the first on state property that is a power purchase agreement. So it's a third party that actually put it in, and we're getting the benefits by having being able to purchase low power from them. And we're also, that building that you see being produced is a net zero energy building, which means that it's going to be producing just as much power as it uses. And we're going to be doing that we have geothermal wells. There's about 30 geothermal wells that are about 500 feet deep that are going to be extracting energy from the earth to warm the building. We'll have a lot of natural ventilation in the building, in the areas. And this is a fairly unique building because it's a math and science building, which has a lot of labs. And these buildings require constant air exchanges and things. So it's probably one of the only in New England of its kind at net zero, and one of the few in the northern latitudes for doing this. And so it's the John Sprague Allied Health and Science Building. There's going to be a lot of energy it's called an enthalpy wheel, which is it's actually going to extract energy from the air that's going out of the building to put it into the incoming air. So we have a lot of high energy, high efficiency heat exchanges that are occurring in the building. It's one of what they're putting in is the most efficient system right now. We also have localized heating in the rooms and localized ventilation of hoods and all, so that we're not throwing all the air out into the environment. And so by that time, by the time all these things are done, we'll have 50% of our power on campuses from renewable sources. Would have been 95%, as we were supposed to have a 900 kilowatt wind turbine on campus. But because of a lot of the controversy and some of the other wind turbines around, the state decided they didn't want to be in the middle of controversy and stuff. And so we didn't get our wind turbine. But we would have had 95% of our power. So I think that's actually showing how that campus is doing things. We have our renewable energy programs, and we have a lot of educational stuff to try and make people aware that, and my theme is that from one of the early Native Americans, that we don't inherit the land from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. And I think if we all try to look at that, that idea that this isn't ours, what we have, we're just holding it for the current time, and that we have to give it to the next generation in a better situation than we had it. I think that would go a long way.
Massachusetts and New England is our overdependence on carbon-based fuels, and in particular, the limited diversification of our fuel sources, as has been mentioned several times. The fact that also Massachusetts doesn't have a lot of natural resources that are energy resources is a disadvantage towards. So the challenge is how can we diversify both in terms of source and quality of generation. So I think that's the challenge. To me, the opportunity is the dog. And it's all, to me, it's all about the dog. I'm not going to steal Matt's thunder a lot. But what I mean by the dog is about 40 miles offshore in the ocean. Actually, before I say this, pop quiz to everybody. Anybody ever watch the Weather Channel out there? Raise your hand if you ever watch the Weather Channel. Right? So, here's the question, right? If the storm comes from Canada, or if it comes from California, or if it comes from the Gulf of Mexico, or if it comes from Florida, and it comes north, where's it going? Right past Long Island, right 30, 40 miles off of the southern coast of Massachusetts, Rhode Island.
Do that sound effect. There you go.
And it's I forget, he'll say the right number, about a quarter of the U.S. wind reserve in renewable wind energy. It's far enough offshore, you know, I can see it. So to me, the opportunity is the dog. And what I mean by the dog is, what is it, 8,000 square miles or so? It's this giant tract of the ocean that used to be a square. It used to be a square. But through good planning, fishing grounds were carved out of the square. And migratory mammal, migratory routes were carved out of the square. And shipping lanes were carved out of the square. So if you have it, I live with artists, if you have a vivid imagination and you ever played with Legos, and you know what a Scotty dog looks like, now the square kind of became like a little Lego Scotty dog profile. The dog, right? Know about the dog? You didn't know about the dog? Right? Well, you can have imagination. I didn't say that. So again, the take home for me is the opportunity is all about the dog. So the dog is the big wind renewable field out there, and it's equivalent in wind to what the North Slope oil at its peak was to Alaska, except it's a renewable and inexhaustible supply. So what BCC has to do is look over the horizon and figure out what occupations will be needed and what training will be needed to sustain that industry. And it's not rocket science, it's actually twin science, but it's not a mystery because the Europeans have built 80 ocean-based wind farms. So you know the jobs that are required to do the gig, you know the skill sets that are required to be trained, and what BCC is trying to get ahead of that. Now, someone said earlier, the real challenge right now, the short-term challenge is, how do you get ready for this stuff that's longer term and get people working through the training pipeline, and then what do, right? So what BCC has tried to do is link our green weatherization track, which is largely non-credit track, with our wind power certificate track, so that through the combination of academic experience and For some who are in the non-credit track, it means completion of the high set, the high school equivalency test. But this idea of academic training and workplace-based training to create this on-ramp and has a couple of off-ramps. So in green construction, we teach orientation to support services. We teach about the OSHA 10 certification, introduction to construction and construction tools, job readiness, and job placement. But then we also segue into credit-bearing stuff. So we have a college success seminar. We have a college reading and learning strategy seminar, because everybody knows the value and importance of fundamental learning reading skills. Foundational math, because you're not going to be doing carpentry things and electrical things if you can't have foundational math. And then work experience. There's always tying the academic thing to the work experience. So that's the certificate-based stuff. It's short term, it's about a year. And then what we've also done is tried to, in the engineering school, contextualize some of the engineering stuff, engineering courseware, so that you can get really engineering focused on some of these engineering concepts. So, for example, the credit-bearing courses include the college success seminar, but then the introduction to sustainable and green technology, the fuse skills, reading and learning strategies, foundation math, writing skills, clear exploration in the clean energy industry, the psychology of work, electrical machinery, fluid dynamics, and power, wind power. So that, and then I'm done, when you get out, you end up with industry-recognized certificates that include the OSHA 10 certification, a wind power certificate, a mass green weatherization certificate, and anywhere between 11 and 22 college credits. So we're really trying to target the short-term exit points to the weatherization installer and the entry-level technicians, as well as entry-level wind technicians when the field is known. So we think that that's a good role for the community college, and we're in it for the long haul.
My name is Matthew Morrissey, and I yield my time to the gentleman to the right. I'll be very brief so we can keep going with the program, for a number of years I ran something called the New Bedford Economic Development Council, and through the New Bedford Economic Development Council founded something called the Wind Energy Center, which is an entity that's really focused on bringing offshore wind to Massachusetts, to the United States, and making sure that job opportunities come to New Bedford and to this region as a result. Today, I represent something called the Offshore Wind Massachusetts, which is a 501c6 organization, and it's dedicated to educating people around the state of Massachusetts on the importance of offshore wind as it relates to climate change and new job creation, particularly though, folks, in the context of our beloved Cape Wind not moving forward anywhere near the pace that we have been working for years in hoping that it would. In essence, and I'll stop Becky with this, and I'm sure we'll come back to it, but in essence, offshore wind represents an enormously important and scalable, reliable, and job-creating opportunity for Massachusetts, and as a very real climate change mitigation technology. We in Massachusetts for 14 years have been educated really by one project, it's Cape Wind. So the average Massachusetts resident thinks about offshore wind and doesn't necessarily think about the 80 industrial scale projects that are successfully running in Europe with ratepayer benefits and with job benefits and with massive carbon reductions that are occurring, and now costs coming down over the last 3 years radically, very much online with onshore wind in the United States. We think about the litigation, we think about negative press, we think about sole source deals to one company. All of that stuff is wrapped in, fairly or unfairly, into offshore wind and Cape Wind. So offshore Massachusetts is made up of the 3 leaseholding companies that own 600,000 acres of offshore wind development rights, competitively won by through the federal government auction process. They're in the market now, and Becky's right. The reality is we stand at a moment in time for climate change in Massachusetts and in the United States, and that is this, that if we are able to push Massachusetts leaders forward to ensure that an energy bill, an omnibus energy bill moves forward here in the state, and we are consolidated in our effort to ensure that a broad and diverse approach is taken to ensure the diversity of the energy portfolio for the first time in a generation in Massachusetts and New England, we have an opportunity to bring renewables to scale like never before. The risk is, if we don't band together and move an omnibus energy bill that contains the renewable portfolio that we believe we need to have, an energy bill is going to, in my view, it's going to happen. The question is, what's going to be in it? So we are indeed in a moment. It's an inflection point. It's whatever you want to call it, but it's very real. And the work that you guys are doing is very important. The work that Pat Haddad has done to begin the conversation around a diverse portfolio, whether we like natural gas or not. I want to tell you something. Representative Haddad, with her position in the Massachusetts legislature, has in one period of time done more to affect the benefits for this region, for its town of Somerset, and for climate change than frankly anybody else in a position of power, outside of Governor Patrick, of course, in a very, very long time. And I would just say this, and Paul and I were talking about this the other day, it is very important to recognize, okay, the Representative Haddad is our friend. The fact that there's hydro, big hydro, the fact that there's onshore wind from it, the fact that there's massive scale offshore wind from right up 15 miles right off our coast is a very, very big deal. And we've got to make sure that we are aligned in supporting those parts of that bill that can make an enormous difference to climate change, job creation, and to the energy portfolio mix in New England together as we move forward. So I'll stop there, and we'll talk more afterwards.
Thank you, folks. That's quite a lot of challenges and almost as many opportunities, thankfully. And thanks to Professor Rack. I know he had to go early to do that. So, unfortunately for you guys, I have a microphone. So I'm going to ask one quick question, and then I've got some questions here that folks have passed up. Thank you so much. Please keep those coming. Some of our staff around the room are collecting those and passing those up. What I'm interested in, Matt, this is directed at you. So you played several different roles, and especially now coming into specializing in offshore wind energy. But the economic development focus that's happened in New Bedford it looks really successful from where I stand. I want to know what a community like, say, Somerset can do to position themselves now, and again in this moment where there's this redevelopment piece coming presently.
Sure. It's not as nearly as successful as we'd like it to be. It all takes far too long. The fact that Cape Wind didn't happen meant that there were a number of people that had been trained to move forward, didn't capture those opportunities. So frankly, there's a lot of frustration in New Bedford, and deservedly so. The opportunities that exist, if you look at offshore wind at scale for jobs, are very, very important. And when you look at a European model, the idea that one port can accommodate the production and the deployment and the maintenance of 5 projects, which is what essentially 2,000 megawatts Representative Haddad's bill would call for, is preposterous. We just can't. Politics aside, the reality is that the south coast of Massachusetts, Somerset, Fall River, New Bedford, perhaps other port communities, will benefit by decent site planning, number one. Are there larger sites that are available by water that are not impeded by different characteristics? Is there a workforce in the region, Somerset, that are ready to go? And what Paul said about BCC's leadership is extraordinary. Bristol Community College is, without question, the leader in community college training and education and renewables in the Commonwealth. And the important reality is there must be a place for offshore wind to plug in. You know, it's like you're running a vacuum in the living room. You got to go to the kitchen, which I hate, and you need to replug your vacuum. And the fact is, you have to plug in that offshore wind farm somewhere, and that somewhere is Somerset. It's been well studied. Brayton Point, perhaps Montauk, are both sites where the excess capacity that will exist can be utilized for an offshore wind interconnect into the grid. What does it mean? It means that this region that we're in here will have a benefit of substantial, very substantial pilot payments, payments in lieu of taxes that will come to the town of Somerset as a result of these large offshore wind farms plugging into the grid connect at Brayton Point or at Montauk. Those are the best, highest capacity pieces of infrastructure that exist in our entire region, well studied by the Massachusetts Clean Energy Council. So offshore wind, ironically, and truly ironically, becomes an answer to the economic challenge that exists with Brayton Point closing. It becomes an opportunity to take the 200 jobs that would be lost, union jobs that would be lost by men and women working at Brayton Point, working at facilities associated with the offshore wind farm or farms off our coast, and it deals with climate reduction, carbon, nitrogen, sulfide issues at scale. And the last thing I'll say is, so Brayton Point is a 1,600 megawatt plant. All we're really saying, when you kind of get beyond the hyperbole, is replace Brayton Point here with a clean version of Brayton Point 15 miles away, plugging into the SEMA district and creating jobs and creating clean energy and diversifying the energy portfolio. Right? It doesn't seem to be that big a deal. Price and the perception of price is a challenge, but I'll get to that probably next question.
That's what I was hoping you'd say. Big opportunity for Somerset there. A specific question for the city councilors in Fall River. If I sign up with the community solar program offered by Next Step Living, will I receive a tax rate? Or anybody else who'd like to jump up and share? How about that? Next Step Living representatives, for instance.
It's a little bit up my alley since I spend a lot of solar energy. So there's a lot of different programs out there right now. So the question I would actually ask if somebody wanted to clarify on that, or I can clarify regardless, would be if that person has their own solar panels, or if they're purchasing the PPA, through PPA, purchasing solar energy, which you can designate. So at your current, unless you have National Grid, at your current provider, whether it be a service like Coord or something like that, you can actually ask them to give you a certain amount of power that comes from solar or generally renewables. So that might be where they're going with that. If that is what you're opting to do, you do not get the tax benefit. You do not get the SRAC credit. The SRAC credit, the actual tax credit, is only if you have solar and you are at the generator on site. So that's the only time you'll get the tax credit right now in Massachusetts. And Massachusetts leads the nation in SRAC credits. It is an excellent program. It's real. It's now. I definitely am a supporter of wind, of course. I'm a supporter of all renewables. But solar is something we have to take advantage of right now, since the tax credits are so good and they're short term and not forever. I know that a lot of solar industries are lobbying for the state to continue their incentives, and the incentives have changed over time. So in the early days of solar, it was kind of like the Wild West in Massachusetts. Every solar company in the world was trying to get into Massachusetts because the tax incentives were actually so profitable. And what you had is you had actual fields being cut down, trees being cut down to put ground solar panel units like in our own.
It's a little conflict there.
Exactly, that's a conflict. So the legislation has caught up and has said, well, we're not going to incentivize cutting down trees. We will incentivize putting solar panels over parking lots, like you saw here, because the parking lot is already asphalt. It's already there absorbing all that heat. So why not protect the cars by putting a canvas over it and absorbing all that energy? That's smart politics. That's smart legislation. And those are the things that we have to continue to do. The second piece is you have all these buildings, especially with flat roofs, That's a great place for solar, right? It's a flat roof, you can put the solar panels on, absorb the energy that's beating down every single day. And those are the incentives that exist right now in Massachusetts. And it's happening at a rate that's just unbelievable, and that's something we should continue to take advantage of. And I can continue on, but I hope that answers the question a little bit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And if you wouldn't mind actually passing the mic just to your left to both Karen and Ronelle, but I think it also answers specifically for the next couple of meetings.
Abagail answered it pretty well. You cannot get tax credits for community solar. You have to have the panels on your home and generate the electricity.
And as a follow-up, I think Next Step Living has been a leader and has really stepped out front first when it comes to community solar in Massachusetts. But the community solar model is really evolving. And Eileen, from the Marion community, can speak to that. Specifically, Marion has its own solar farm, and it is an ownership model. So there are community solar farms that individual homeowners, people who live in the community or the load zone, actually purchase a number of panels, and they are the owner. And so there is an SREC model for them. There is a tax credit mechanism for them. However, developers are looking for land, and they're looking for towns to work with. So as the community solar model evolves, you will see in your load zones, if you're an Eversource load zone or National Grid load zone, you will see community farms opening up to residential purchases, and they're called solar shares or something like that. One of the successful first individually owned solar community farms was in Rehoboth, and I went to the ribbon cutting about a year and a half ago, and I was shocked to find out that it was fully committed. So every single share and panel had been purchased, half going to commercial, half going to residential. And that was really exciting to hear that, because before that installation went in, there was virtually no community solar in Massachusetts. So I think it's important to know that the field of community solar is evolving. Next Step Living has kind of been out in front and will offer services to people who roofs are terrible, shaded, maybe they are in a condo association that doesn't allow it, or they rent. So Next Step Living's model is unique in that way. But if you did want the tax credit and to get into the SREC market and want to purchase those panel shares, there will be developers who are moving into the region who are going to offer that. Each model is individual. I think that's where community education is so important.
Thank you, Mayor.
Can I just on a personal note, I just installed solar panels on my home. Thank you. And just received my first bill from National Grid, and I'm getting a credit of $135. So I see the value.
If I could just expand on solar too, this might be a good opportunity to talk a little bit about it. I do want to stress how important solar is to Massachusetts. We truly are the leader. If you go to other states that don't have SREC programs, you do not see the amount of solar panels on households, at colleges, on businesses. So we truly are the leader in solar, and we have to keep expanding that. And there's a lot of fear that those SREC credits are going to go away, which of course disincentivizes businesses, especially solar businesses, to go green. These tax credits have been shown time and time again that they pay back the state, they pay back the business, they pay back the homeowner, and of course, most importantly, it's green energy. So you're producing energy that is completely clean. And in all honesty, I mean, the cost of these things have come down so much where you can get utility rates through solar at the same price, if not cheaper, than your current energy through traditional sources. So it really is an amazing opportunity for Massachusetts to continue to take advantage of. What we did with USI, which is the Urban Solar Initiative, is as I was campaigning, I was just going around for my first term, and Fall River is very unique, but unique to the area, not so unique to the area, unique for around the country. And we have a lot of mills. A lot of the other communities in this room have many mills as well. So when I was meeting with the mill owners associations, the key was how do we figure out how to use these buildings' roofs to go green, to actually replace the roof, which is part of infrastructure, because a lot of these roofs are falling off and are dilapidated. So that was the first goal, and then really meeting the other needs that they have. So talking about how do they take advantage of tax incentives, because if you don't have the income, you can't get the tax credits. So there's a lot of interesting things that these companies have done where investors will come in and buy those tax credits for you and provide you with really low cost energy and replace your roof even. So we created a program here in Fall River, and we did our first 4 installations last year. We're looking to at least double that this year. It's a slow process, but it's been an exciting one as well, to actually be able to help mill owners replace their roofs, get solar on their roofs, and if they have excess power that they're not using, be able to sell that back into the grid, which of course is green energy. So I want to really stress how important solar is to Fall River and to our surrounding communities, but especially Massachusetts, and we can still continue to be a leader in solar energy. So thank you.
I have a couple of questions in front of me, and I'm trying to sort of put these together, excuse me, on the fly. And I think we've addressed some of the questions, and I think I'd like to get back to this topic in a moment, but about renters, for instance, how folks, what you panelists are doing to help renters engage landlords in energy efficiency and clean energy. Also, what about power companies lobbying to put fees or limits on solar panels? But I'm going to back us up from that first, just a little broader here. I go to a question that is addressed, I think, to all of us here, which is that fossil fuels need to stay in the ground. How can we help to keep the carbon in the ground? Again, in the vehicle that we're here for is to talk about redevelopment in the region.
So I'll start something like this close to me. I think it's very simple. I think it's about creating demand. We are the consumers. We're the ones buying the energy. So if we take our dollar and bring it to renewable energy, you're going to see the marketplace change. And you're going to see that it's going to become too expensive to take oil out of the ground. Right? You saw the opposite happen this past summer, well, not this past summer, excuse me, this past winter, when prices for gasoline dropped. There's a lot of different scenarios, there's a lot of different reasons for that. But again, if you take that dollar and we bring it to a company like Tesla that creates a 100% electric car, and that's the demand you're creating, you're going to see more and more companies. I look at this from a very business perspective. I see the government playing an important role in incentivizing and continuing to make sure that we have this as a top priority. But the business community, the technologies that will be developed will be because of demand, as well as the need for climate change. But demand right now is the biggest way that we can have an impact of bringing that dollar to solar, to wind, to renewables. That's the biggest impact that we can make, each and every one of us in this room.
That's,
great response. I think we have a climate crisis on our hands, but we also have an ignorance crisis on our hands. A lot of people just unaware, and if they are aware, some people don't care. And I hate to say it, but I was one of those people until I got into the job that I now have. And working with a whole bunch of enthusiastic people and who are passionate about this, you can't help but to become passionate yourself. But when the light bulb went off for me, I was like, oh wow, like I was really ignorant to this. I knew about it, but I really didn't care. But that's what we're facing. And before we can even get to switching the dollar bill of where it's going, whether we're paying for gas or renewable energy, we have to educate people. And that's really where to start, is just educating people. Because you can't do any better unless you know better. And a lot of people just don't know better. So I think we need to really start with educating people about this. And the more people that get on board, then we can really start influencing change.
thank you. I like that. If we don't know better, we can't do better. Abagail, do you want to respond?
I would just add that following last winter, we've experienced a lot of enthusiasm at the political level for increasing the amount of natural gas that we use in New England to generate power, which would be the opposite of what Becky has asked. How do we reduce the reliance on fossil fuels? And I think that you're right, that a lot of the argument from the consumer, what we can do is make that economic argument. And, all of the spending that we do on fossil fuels like natural gas or petroleum, that comes out of our pocket and it leaves the state. It leaves Massachusetts, it leaves the region. If it's expenditure on natural gas for either home heating or for power generation, it's going to other parts, to Pennsylvania or other natural gas producing regions. If it's for petroleum products, it's probably leaving this country or
or going to North or South Dakota, but it's not staying here. Economic analysis has shown that when we reduce the amount of money that we're spending on fossil fuels by reducing your power bill through energy efficiency, all of that becomes more disposable income for you. If your electric bill or your gas bill is lower, you have more money left over, and most of that is spent on things locally. Maybe it's an extra haircut, or a dinner out, or maybe you're paying off your medical bills, or whatever it is. But most of that spending happens here in your community or in Massachusetts. So the economic analysis shows that for every $1 that we in Massachusetts invest in energy efficiency, in not using a kilowatt hour or a third of natural gas, that generates $5.40 in additional economic activity, or in gross state product. And for every $1 million that we invest in energy efficiency, it generates about 48 to 50 job years of employment. Some of those jobs are directly in companies like Next Step Living, the weatherization contractors who come to your house, or the auditors, or but a lot of those jobs are economy-wide. When you have an extra meal at a restaurant, there's a waiter or a waitress who's employed there. But that's about 80% of the economic impact is throughout the economy. In Massachusetts, I think the budgets, and Karen might know this better, but are about $500 million a year spent on energy efficiency in Massachusetts. So that is a lot of job years that are being created through not using power.
Thank you, Abagail. Somebody else have a reply? Anybody else know how to keep the carbon in the ground? Well, then let's get back actually to the question about what folks on the panel here are doing for renters and working with landlords to help everybody have access. And I think it was Karen who mentioned that our energy efficiency program is funded by ratepayers, but it's run by the utilities, and maybe you can speak to your concerns there about some transparency.
Sure. Over the last 2 years, our outreach has brought forward a point that we actually didn't know when we first started doing the outreach. We thought that everyone was eligible for a energy assessment through the MassSafe program, so therefore everyone would be able to take advantage of the program and actually receive one at no cost. So as things turned out, we've learned that although, as Becky said, everyone pays into the program, not everyone has the same benefits. So typically, just to provide some basic education, when someone signs up for home energy assessment, they're asked if they rent or if they own. And if they own, certain things come along with that. How much is your energy bill? Would you like to set up an appointment? And the technician goes out and has full access to the entire building, basement to attic, so that they can do a full building envelope analysis and give the person the best report as far as what's needed. And they're given a bevy of free light bulbs and power strips and wonderful things. It's about a $600 to $700 value, and it really helps cut someone's energy usage right off the bat. If you rent, usually your building envelope is not addressed. It's not able to be addressed. You have an apartment or a flat. Typically, there might not even be access to the attic. You have no control over it, or you might feel intimidated that if you have someone coming over, like a repair person or a technician in a van, that your landlord or property owner might get upset. So there's that initial suspicion, and typically a renter would be intimidated to even sign up for a home energy assessment. They might cancel their appointment, thinking my landlord is going to get upset with me, or the technician feels that they can't do a full analysis and provide the person with the best service, so they go back to their director or supervisor and say, I couldn't do a full assessment because I didn't have access to the full building. So in our efforts, we've slowly been trying to pick away at that and figure out how can we work with the landlords and property owners to provide full access to the building for all of their renters. But they're typically not incentivized to cut the energy usage of their renters because the renters pay their own bills. So why should the landlord change out the hot water heater or address the insulation issues if they don't pay for the heat? And so at the end of the month, we'll be commenting, as a grassroots organization about this discrepancy so that in the next 3-year plan, this is actually addressed. It was supposed to be addressed in the last 3-year plan, but it really wasn't. And I know Ronelle can speak a little bit to maybe the financial side of why it's difficult for energy service providers to do the energy audits for renters when they don't have access to all the information.
Yes, so the energy advisor will go out to the home. He can't go any further. He may find certain things that need to be repaired in the home. You might need insulation. There might be other repairs that need to be done. But until we have the landlord's consent, we can't move forward. So from a business standpoint, we're losing out because we can't go any further. And a lot of times, like Karen was saying, the landlord really doesn't feel the need to step up because they're not paying the energy bills. So to them, unless they are really passionate about, conservation and reduction of energy, they may go forward. But other than that, a lot of times they don't, which does cause a challenge because, like Karen was saying, renters kind of get the short end of the stick when everybody's paying into the program. So it's really not fair, and that is something that I would like to see get addressed.
I can pass some of this way.
I would just add that there are a couple of additional ways to compel landlords to improve the energy efficiency of their buildings to benefit their tenants that can also be implemented at the community level by the city council. So one of those is to require energy disclosure at a time of sale or at a time of rent, so that a renter has a history of energy bills for that unit. And they can compare one apartment to another apartment or one house to another and see the energy bills going backwards. That might, make them choose the more efficient building over another. And the other is to set minimum energy efficiency standards for rental housing. This one is a bit tougher, but it would ensure that every renter in your community has some baseline level of energy efficiency that their unit has to be up to.
That's a great idea. I think Mike and I are going to file a resolution for the next council. Seriously, that's something that can definitely happen. I think that more elected officials involved in the process as well, I think would definitely help that because that's something that we absolutely can do. The second one is definitely going to be more of a challenge, especially if over and out. But definitely the first one is an interesting one. But I did want to comment on earlier that I think is absolutely true. I see it every single day with the project that we did put together here in the city. The landlord, unless they have a tangible financial benefit, unfortunately, there really is no incentive outside of that for them to upgrade their facilities with energy management systems. I'm not just talking, renewable energy with solar, but even energy management systems, which are so valuable nowadays. Energy efficient light bulbs, etc. Unless they have a financial incentive, there really hasn't been a way to do that. So I think, and this is a perfect example of why we're here tonight, talking about where can government kind of plug the holes of the private sector, and that's a way that we can. That's absolutely a way that we can. But yeah, unless the business, in my experience, and I don't really do any residential anymore, more commercial, unless the business is utilizing the power, they have no incentive to save money or to go green or anything like that, unless of course they're conscious about it. So that's something we definitely have to work on. And I think that's a good step that I think we should definitely sponsor.
Thank you. There are great ideas coming out here. This is what I hope would happen again. I'm going to look to a table here of some colleagues of mine and give you a heads up. I'm going to put some Somerset residents on the spot if they want a moment to speak, but not yet. So get your thoughts together if you want to. I did want to take advantage of the fact that Tony Connors from Westport, joined us from the Energy Committee. But now's the time, and I'm being mindful of our time here. I come from an organization called Clean Water Action, so you might guess we're not exactly agnostic on this issue. We think we got some skin in this game here. And so we have canvassers that knock on doors all over, actually all over the country, and we're about 50,000 members strong in Massachusetts. And one of the great things that they do, that I did for years and years before I got to this esteemed position, is ask folks to take an action. And so they've been knocking on doors and collecting postcards into Governor Baker, calling on his leadership for this just transition for the South Coast. Want a transition that supports workers losing their jobs, community losing a lot of its municipal revenue, but also pushing forward the best ideas, the 21st century pivot into a place of leadership for the South Coast that I think folks feel like has historically been ignored when it comes to the economic development picture and resources from the state level. A big poster version of this postcard so that you may see it. And we brought an action item for those of you who would like to take just a small step with us. It's a petition version of that same postcard, so it's really quite simple language. But we have several of these circulating on clipboards, and it's got this image you'll see calling on, again, on the governor for a vision and a commitment for clean energy, good jobs, and healthy communities. So I'd ask you all, as you're here or lingering or visiting or even on the way out, to make sure you see the clipboard and please add your name to I think we've got about 1,500 postcards, but also handwritten letters that our canvassers collected out in the field that we'll be delivering to the governor and hopefully send back some photos of the event. Any of I can, Alex can, Joel, Mike still, thank you. So with that, I'm going to see if my friends in Somerset who are here, you know, in sort of the heart of darkness or not darkness, right? Terrible analogy, would like to say anything at the moment, and then also Tony from Westport, maybe identifying some opportunities and challenges that you see from the Energy Committee there. Any comments from there?
I like the wind tower idea, great point. I hope that something will come of that, especially if we do offshore wind. There's probably plenty of room to do something else with the land that's left over. I don't want to see it repowered as gas.
I'm going to say that louder. Somebody from Somerset said they didn't want to see the site repowered gas, that you recognize the opportunity of offshore wind coming in through Somerset, and also leaving that you know, again, we've got some opinions and hopes for the site that could be developed, you know, with offshore wind coming through, but still have the footprint of the land to do some different and creative uses.
I would like to see them actually maybe be a staging area, build some other offshore wind places. We have Montauk site and we have Liberty Point, both are right on the water.
Great, well, thank you for letting me put you on the spot.
Come on, Paula. It was your birthday yesterday.
Yes.
How can you resist?
Are we gonna sing?
I really didn't come here to be modest.
Basically because of jobs involved, the fact that we're losing half of our tax base, and people just don't know or care. All they care is their taxes are going to go up. They want the same services, and they don't want to pay for them. And that's our bottom line. And we need the support of our legislature to make sure that we don't go backwards. Just yesterday, I was approached that they would like to rezone a portion of the Montauk property, the portion of the tank farm that National Grid has purchased. And we would very much like to see it rezoned business or mixed use. And they think that's wonderful, but they want a layover on it. I didn't know there was such a thing, but apparently we can do a layover and we will allow industry as well as business. So guess what, guys? We can have another duty industry there. And these are things that we're fighting on a local level. We need everybody's support because we need something clean in Somerset. And I'll get you later.
But, you know, that's about the region, but it's clear that the land is where you live. And Tony Connors again from Westport. Oh, actually, sorry, do you want to grab the microphone here? Just give your couple of minutes here on opportunities and challenges that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I can add much. I'm an amateur when it comes to energy compared to the professionals here, but Westport is a small town that has not really been a leader at all in energy. We've really been a follower, but we're sort of in the middle ground there. There's some towns that aren't doing much at all. Some towns like Dartmouth that have done wonderful things compared to us, and we're sort of in the middle somewhere. We've got two power purchase agreements that cover about 90% of municipal use. We're getting the credits for that, saving a lot of money. We have an electric vehicle that we'll have through the state program. That'll come in about 2 weeks or so. We're getting a landfill. We're working on a lease on our landfill. If anybody's got a landfill, they're talking about the SREC program. Terrific program, and one of the highest levels of reimbursement you can get is for landfills. If anybody has them in town that are capped. On the other hand, when we tried to do the South Coast Energy Challenge, the selectmen turned it down. So we're not that we're not as advanced as we want to be, and some things don't quite work. I look at this as a neighboring town, in a sense, close enough to Somerset to be a neighbor. I remember when that plant was built. I'm old enough to remember that. It was right around the time 195 went in, I think. A 16-year-old kid driving along there and seeing this place come up. It's been one of the ugliest power plants around, and it's wonderful to see it go. And I really feel for the people who are worried about the tax loss and the job loss. And clearly, it's going to be tricky because you're going to get split public opinion. Clearly, you already have that. I'm not an energy guy. I'm a historian, actually. And so the thing that interests me about that is, what was that place? I don't remember. I'm not old enough to remember what it was like before they built it. What was that before? What kind of historic value does it have? And I'm hoping that somebody is thinking about historic considerations, not historic preservation, because there's nothing really to preserve there, but the land is a beautiful land on the water, and I'm hoping somebody is thinking about that. And I'm hoping that this wonderful idea that I had never heard about before, about that this is a place that's tied into the grid like you wouldn't believe, so why not pump energy from other places into this place? Because it has to come ashore somewhere, and what a perfect place to do that. So I think there's some wonderful ideas. Frankly, I don't have much more to add than that. I'm here more to learn than anything else. This has really been fascinating. And I hope before we end here, we do think more about what kind of studies are being done. Wasn't there a feasibility study, not a feasibility, but some sort of study? I'd like to hear more about that and what various people have come up with for the possible uses of it, and what kind of things the people of Somerset being faced with now. Has anybody made a presentation to you of possible uses, or is it mostly just a bunch of hearsay and a lot of opinionated more than anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And actually, if there were money flowing here, I would have paid you for that say. Because I thought another thing to do is invite everyone here who's so interested enough to come and spend your, Thursday evening, and we're drawing to a close, so again, I'm trying to be mindful of that, to Somerset's coal plant reuse study public meeting. And the next one is on June 4th? 9th? We will find that out. Does anybody up on the panel know when the next Clean Energy Center power plant reuse assessment?
The 9th.
It's on the 9th, thank you. And those are held, this next one is held.
Offshore wind.
There you go. Are you going to be singing that song? So that's the answer, is that yes, there is a state-funded reuse study to help determine, sort of the state and status of the land at both the Montauk and Breaking Point stations, and what's possible with the land, and then use input from the community to create a vision or at least to come up with some possibilities for what could happen there. A challenge is that these places, the sites are privately owned, so but this is an important exercise to open the possibilities and again to take input from the community members who live there. So I encourage everyone here, again, for the same reasons, like this isn't just about Somerset, and I see here really fruitful exchanges happening with not just, not only, but certainly with some of the municipal leadership here, that it seems like a really great exchange of tools. And Pauline is going to give you the details perhaps.
Except it just went out. Joe had the information on the gas leak speaker. Purposes of transition.
Okay, and one more announcement. Thank you for reminding me. There will be a presentation given to the Somerset Citizen Transition Committee, which is a transition specific to energy and the plant sites in the community, on the 21st of May. So coming up soon. 19th. Sorry. There you go, Tuesday the 19th at Old Town Hall in Somerset on gas leaks. So this is natural gas leaks, leaks in the distribution lines going to homes and businesses, and what's the state of the problem and what are some proposed solutions. So please also join us in Somerset for that. Again, please sign the petition into the governor calling on his leadership for this transition. And I'm going to zip down the line. Actually, why don't we start there, just because I keep starting on this end, for a closing remark, or leave us with a parting activity, even if you will, to move us down the line on these opportunities, if you got one of those.
We're all going to get up and do a little jig as a party activity. I think that it's very important to recognize that there is no one solution to climate change. Of course, that every piece of what has been discussed today is critically important here and everywhere else around the nation and the world. And that there is truly a unique opportunity to replace the existing generation that's going to be retiring over the next 5 and 10 years with something else, and something that is far more beneficial to removing the growth of the warming climate, the advance in the warming climate, and offshore wind will benefit the Commonwealth in many ways. It will benefit the advanced offshore, will benefit higher education, it will benefit organized labor, it will benefit non-organized labor work opportunities, it will benefit very real energy diversity, because it comes into our discussion at a very different place. 14 years ago, when Cape Wind was first offered up, the offshore wind industry around the world was in its infancy. Today, like cell phone technology, 14 years ago, there was hardly email. So we tend to not remember. And the reality is, when you look at offshore wind, far enough offshore, you hardly see it at a scale that is greater than some of the losses that are currently being anticipated, the potential. And you have the opportunities to think about jobs that have been created. Nowhere in the Commonwealth will benefit more than the south coast of Massachusetts. The pricing will not be what people have understood offshore wind costs, not with competition, not with advances in technology, and not with far better and more consistent wind that exists off this coast. So we have a lot of work to do to educate people around the state, in the State House, the new administration, about the benefits, the true benefits of offshore wind 14 years after Cape Wind was proposed. And we are going to need everyone to grab an oar to help in that discussion. So, for Becky, I'll offer contact information and try to reach out to you, but the answer is you need a replacement. You need something to address the very real issues that communities that face the real change going from fossil fuels to non-fossil fuels, what they face. And those elected leaders need a choice. I'm just simply saying offshore wind is a very tangible, very real choice that can be commissioned 4 to 5 years. 4 to 5 years after a contract is in hand. That means a bill is passed, the regulations are promulgated, the DPU puts out something on the street, they get a deal, whoever competes for it comes in wins. 4 to 5 years later, those turbines are spinning. So producing clean renewable energy jobs. So it's not 20 years out, it's not 10 years out, it's 4 to 5 years out. In today's offshore wind world, a lot of work to do together. Thank you.
I guess my call to action to you would be to support Representative Haddad's bill that Matt just talked about. There's omnibus energy, there's omnibus energy bill that critical is the most important next step to take Massachusetts off carbon. So I would ask you to do two things in that respect. I know you're going to support Pat because she's just so helpful and it's the right thing to do. What I also want you to do is call your neighbors, call your friends in other districts, and call your colleagues and coalitions in other districts, and have them get to their legislators. Just think of this, right? How many of you learned a little bit about offshore wind tonight, right? It here, it affects us the most. Think anybody in Leominster has a clue about this? No. Okay, pick it on Leominster. Sounds like a pretty funny name to pick on tonight. But my point is, call others in other parts of Massachusetts, because it's going to take the entire legislature to support this bill, and they stand to benefit from this reach down here. So please do those things.
This may seem a little far-fetched, but back to the whole educational piece and informing people, I'd like to see a coalition get together of these organizations. I'd like to know more about offshore Cape Wind and a good PowerPoint presentation. I'm sure I'm not the only one who wants more detailed information about it. And just all the other options we have with renewable energy that'll help assist Somerset and the residents to really make a decision moving forward, because it really it's up to you guys to take action and make change. See what you want going forward, but I think educating everybody of the options that they have, pros and cons, will really be helpful. And my little plug for the night, anybody who knows anybody who's looking for a job in renewable energy, need job, nextstepliving.com/careers. Take a look. Have a good evening.
I'll just briefly remember the day that I was driving, actually on 195, headed into New Bedford. I was just passing through Fall River, and I heard that Great Point was going to be closed in 2017, and I almost pulled over to call my coworker Diana Painter, who was our community organizer at the time, to celebrate with her. And there's nothing like having a Goliath to kind of, fuel the fight. But I feel like now that, we kind of envision the Goliath falling, and we can only take a second to celebrate, what we have to do is sort of regroup and figure out who else needs to be included in looking forward to the future and being part of something that very few communities actually get to do, which is to think about the future and what they're going to put in place now that's going to be powering their region when their grandchildren, are there. And so I feel really excited by that. I feel it's a much better goal than just getting the plant shut down. I feel like it's much more positive, it's much more inclusive of more people, which is what our organization wants to do, because most people's priorities are not environmental, they're socioeconomic, and their concerns are linked much more to their pocketbook than, to whether or not even their air is clean. So I think that, the more people are included in this future, positive future, the more powerful, our results are going to be.
Well, I want to thank the event sponsors for having me on this panel. And Tony, I'm an amateur as well. But this was very, very informative. And the common thing that I think I heard tonight was that we need everyone to work together. I heard Mr. Morrissey say we need to band together. And so, my takeaway is that there needs to be cooperation and communication, between the business community, between elected officials, between the public. If we're going to have this transition from, coal and gas energy facilities to wind and solar. So, as an elected official, I want to do my part, and Becky had asked me to support a proposed municipal resolution. I'm going to ask my colleague to my right to join me on that if he's so inclined, that requests Governor Baker to partner with local community leadership and to provide a vision for clean energy solutions that are both smart and sensible, and to help our displaced workers transition from these old coal plants that are closing. So we have our homework. We have another resolution we'll be co-sponsoring together. So I thank you for having me as part of the panel, and everybody have a good evening. Thank you.
So we're excited for that. Just in my closing remarks, actually, if you look to the left here, you have a banner of the oil age. That's actually a really old poster. I remember getting that back in high school. The exact poster. It says the oil age will end in 2050, I believe is what it says. You know, the world has gone through so many ages, right? I heard Dr. Rack speak about the ice age, the impending ice age. If we don't change our ways. There's another age coming right now. It's the green age, and that's very exciting. I think it's already upon us. There's a lot of things we can do when we leave this room. The first is homework, right? The research on all these different technologies that can be implemented today. Everyone in this room could go solar, for example, in the meantime on their households right now. That's an option. Cape Wind, well not Cape Wind, but other wind projects that's being worked on locally is something that's going to happen. All these things we talked about have to happen. I don't think anyone disagrees with that, but accelerating that is what we're here to do. That's what I'm here to do for sure. I know my colleagues and everyone I'm sitting at the table with wants to see that accelerated as well. So I will do my part to make that happen. And I thank you for having me on this panel as well.
And I'll just say, I'm so glad I came tonight. I spend most of my day in high-level energy policy circles where the closure of Breakpoint is talked about in kind of wonky and abstract terms, like the impact on energy markets or the impact on capacity markets. And coming here tonight made me realize that this issue is so much more human than I think it is for those who are not so attached to the place, attached to the land, members of the community. But it also makes me feel so much more encouraged that the solutions can come from the community, and it presents an enormous opportunity to take back control of your energy future. So I'm really glad to be here. I think I learned a lot more from you than anything else.
To say thank you to all of our panelists and to folks who came to spend your evening to talk with us in this. We've all got skin in the game. That's the short story. And now taking off my hat as an objective, semi-objective moderator, and I do want to just throw out a little caveat to Clean Water Action's work in this area, and it's that there is, and everybody mentioned it, but Matt in particular mentioned Representative Haddad's omnibus energy bill. So again, another sort of wonky term that just means like the bill that's going to have it all in there, right, about energy. And we certainly have one piece of her bill includes public or ratepayer subsidy for gas pipeline expansion. And that's something we're really concerned about, and especially in light of the opportunities for renewables and concerns. I mean, I'm pretty simple-minded. That's why you all are here. But some concerns that with one coming, there may not be so much room for the other. And I think there's so much hope and real, it's hard to say concrete win, right? But this stuff is real. This is happening. And so please, consider supporting pieces of the bill, I would ask you, that really focus on this hopeful, real opportunity to boost the South Coast into the 21st century of energy future. And with that, I'd also like to thank our many co-sponsoring organizations, but especially Coalition for Social Justice. Raise your hand if you got a call from I'm going to close up. Please sign petitions on your way out, and thank you again so much for being here.